It started as an ordinary Friday evening. After a long, grueling week at work, all I wanted was a quiet night to unwind. My wife, Kelly, had mentioned she'd be catching up with some friends after work, and honestly, I hadn't thought much of it. She had her social life, and I had mine. It was one of those healthy boundaries couples were supposed to have, or so I thought. As I sat at home scrolling through my phone, I couldn't shake a nagging feeling. I didn't know why, but something just felt off. Kelly hadn't texted me since leaving work, and usually, she'd send a quick update or a picture of her drink to show she was enjoying herself. Not tonight. I decided to step out for a drink myself, thinking maybe I just needed to get out of my own head. There's a cozy little bar about 15 minutes from our house, where I'd gone a few times before. The place wasn't anything fancy. Dim lighting, a jukebox playing classic rock, and the kind of bartender who remembered your usual after just a couple visits. It was my kind of spot. As I walked into the bar, the atmosphere hit me. A mix of chatter, laughter, and the faint smell of spilled beer. I was about to make my way to the bar stool I always preferred when something, or rather someone, caught my eye. There, at a small table in the corner, was Kelly, but she wasn't alone. At first, I thought maybe it was just a friend or a coworker, but the way they were leaning toward each other, the way her hand casually rested on his arm, the way they laughed like they were the only two people in the world, it didn't take a genius to figure out what was happening. My stomach dropped, and my heart began to race. I stood frozen for a moment, trying to process what I was seeing. She hadn't noticed me yet, too engrossed in whatever this guy was saying. He was tall, with a confident smile that made my blood boil. They looked too comfortable together, like this wasn't the first time they'd met up. Something snapped inside me. I didn't want to cause a scene, but I wasn't about to slink away either. I walked straight up to their table, my footsteps heavy enough to catch their attention. Kelly's laughter died mid-sentence as she looked up and saw me standing there. Her face went pale. "Tom," she stammered, her voice a mix of surprise and panic. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I turned my gaze to the guy she was with. He looked confused, maybe even a little smug, like he thought I was just some random guy. That only fueled my anger. "I didn't realize this was a table for three," I said, my voice calm but icy. Kelly opened her mouth to say something, but I held up my hand to stop her. I wasn't interested in hearing whatever excuse she was about to make. I reached for my left hand, where my wedding ring sat, a symbol of the life and love we'd built over the past 10 years. Slowly, deliberately, I slid it off. Her eyes widened as I clenched the ring in my fist. Without a word, I extended my hand and dropped the ring onto the table in front of her. The metallic clink as it hit the surface felt deafening, like a gavel striking down a verdict. "You can keep this," I said, my voice steady but dripping with contempt. "Clearly, it doesn't mean as much to you as it does to me." Kelly's eyes filled with tears, but I didn't stick around to see if they were from guilt, regret, or something else. I turned on my heel and walked out of the bar, leaving her and her lover sitting there in stunned silence. The cool night air hit me as I stepped outside, but it did little to calm the storm raging inside me. My hands were shaking, and my mind was racing. A part of me wanted to go back in there, to demand answers, to make a scene, but another part of me knew it wouldn't change anything. I got into my car and sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel as I tried to collect my thoughts. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a complete and utter shattering of the trust one had in the woman I loved and built a life with. As I drove home, a million questions swirled in my mind. How long had this been going on? Who was that guy? And most importantly, what was I going to do next? I didn't have all the answers yet, but one thing was clear: my marriage would never be the same again. When I got home, I sat down on the couch and stared at the empty space where my wedding ring used to be. I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and disbelief. This was just the beginning of what would turn out to be the most shocking and life-altering chapter of my life. Little did I know, the events of that night were only the tip of the iceberg. The truth about Kelly, her lover, and the lies she'd been telling would unravel in ways I never could have imagined. And when it was all said and done, I'd be left questioning everything I thought I knew about love, trust, and betrayal. When I woke up the next morning, the house was eerily quiet. Kelly hadn't come home. I wasn't surprised, but it still stung. A decade of marriage, and this was where we'd ended up. My mind was a mess of anger, confusion, and pain. I couldn't just sit there doing nothing, so I did what anyone in my situation would probably do. I started digging. I opened my laptop and logged into our shared phone plan account. Kelly's call and text history wasn't something I'd ever thought I'd need to check, but desperate times called for desperate measures. Sure enough, there were countless messages and calls to a number I didn't recognize, dating back months. The pit in my stomach grew deeper. She'd been talking to this guy behind my back for who knows how long. The real kicker? She hadn't even bothered to hide it. Her carelessness was like an insult on top of the betrayal. It wasn't just the act of cheating, it was the blatant disregard for our marriage, our history, and for me. After scribbling down the unknown number, I decided to call it. I didn't know what I was expecting. Maybe to hear his smug voice so I could finally put a name to the face I'd seen the night before. But the call went straight to voicemail. No name, just a generic automated message. Coward, I thought. That's when an idea struck me. I copied the number into a reverse lookup site, hoping it would give me something. After a few tense moments, the results popped up. Eric Martin. The name didn't ring a bell, but there was an address listed. It wasn't far, just a couple of neighborhoods over. My curiosity was burning. Who was this guy? Was he married? Did he have kids? Did his family know he was spending his nights cozying up to someone else's wife? But before I could decide whether I was actually going to drive over there, my phone buzzed. It was Kelly. Her name lighting up my screen made my blood boil. I stared at it for a few seconds, debating whether to answer or let it go to voicemail. Against my better judgment, I picked up. Tom. Her voice was shaky, unsure. What do you want, Kelly? I asked coldly. I think we need to talk, she said. There was a pause before she added. In person. I laughed bitterly. Now you want to talk? After what I saw last night. It's not what you think, she said quickly. I can explain. You can explain? I snapped. Kelly, I watched you flirt with another man, laughing like a teenager on a first date, and you want me to believe it's not what I think. Please, Tom, she begged, just meet me. Let me explain. I wanted to hang up right then and there, but a part of me needed answers. I needed to hear the lies she was going to feed me, even if it was just to confirm what I already knew. Fine, I said. Come home. Now. We'll talk. It didn't take her long to get back. I was sitting in the living room when she walked in, looking disheveled and nervous. She wasn't wearing her wedding ring, of course. Start talking, I said, my tone leaving no room for excuses. She sat down across from me, twisting her hands together. Tom, I made a mistake. I've been feeling distant lately, and I interrupted. Don't even start with the I felt distant garbage. Just admit it. You cheated. She flinched, but I didn't care. Yes, she finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. But it's not what you think. I laughed darkly. It's exactly what I think. How long? She asked, looking up at me. How long have you been sneaking around with him? I demanded. She hesitated. A few months. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Months? Months, Kelly? And what about all those nights you said you were working late or out with the girls? Were those all lies? She looked away, guilt written all over her face. Not all of them. I stood up, unable to sit still any longer. You disgust me, I said, pacing the room. I gave you everything, Kelly. A home, a life, my trust, and this is how you repay me? It wasn't like that, she said, her voice rising. It just happened. It just happened. I repeated, turning to face her. You don't trip and fall into another man's bed, Kelly. That's not how it works. Her face crumpled, and for a moment, I thought she was going to cry. But instead, she snapped. You don't understand what it's like, Tom. You're always working, always busy. I needed someone who actually paid attention to me. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So this is my fault now? You cheated because I work hard to provide for us. You're never here, she shouted, standing up. You don't even see me anymore. I felt invisible, Tom, and Eric. He made me feel alive again. There it was. The justification, the excuse, like her betrayal was somehow my responsibility. I stared at her, my chest heaving with anger. You know what, Kelly? If that's how you feel, then maybe you should go feel alive with Eric. Because I'm done. Her eyes widened in shock. What are you saying? I'm saying this marriage is over, I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. You can pack your things and leave. You've made your choice, and now I'm making mine. Kelly looked at me like she couldn't believe what she was hearing, but I didn't care. This wasn't the woman I'd married, the woman I'd loved and trusted for so many years. That woman was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. As she stood there, stunned into silence, I walked past her and headed upstairs. I needed space, time to think. But one thing was clear, this was far from over. Kelly's lies, her betrayal, and her complete lack of remorse had opened a door I couldn't close, and whatever was waiting on the other side, I knew it was going to change everything. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? The woman I had spent a decade building my life with, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone, had turned out to be a stranger. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her at that table with Eric, laughing, touching him, living a life I wasn't a part of. The next morning, the house felt colder, emptier. Kelly wasn't there, which was no surprise after the blowout argument the night before. I didn't care where she was or what she was doing. I just wanted her out of my life for good. But as I sat on the couch staring at the wedding photo on the mantel, I couldn't help but wonder, how deep did this betrayal go? I decided I couldn't wait for answers to come to me. I needed to find them. With the address I'd found from the reverse lookup, I drove to Eric's house. It was a modest place, a 2-story home with a neat lawn and a shiny black truck in the driveway. As I parked a little down the street, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Kelly's car was there. I clenched the steering wheel, my mind racing. Part of me wanted to storm up to the front door, to confront them right then and there, but another part of me knew that if I played this smart, I could uncover the full truth. I grabbed my phone and opened the camera app, snapping a few pictures of her car in his driveway. If she wanted to deny things later, I'd have evidence to prove her wrong. Just as I was about to drive away, the front door opened. I ducked down slightly, peering over the dashboard. There she was, stepping out with Eric. They were laughing, looking every bit like a happy couple. She didn't even look guilty. She looked carefree, like this was just another day in her new life, a life where I didn't exist. As they walked to her car, Eric leaned in and kissed her. My chest tightened, my nails digging into my palms. Watching her betray me in real time was like being stabbed repeatedly. I wanted to scream, to lash out, but instead, I forced myself to stay calm. There would be time for that later. For now, I needed more than anger. I needed a plan. I waited until she drove off before pulling away myself. The entire drive home, my mind was spinning. I couldn't just let her get away with this. She had shattered our marriage, disrespected me, and for what? Some fling with a guy who probably thought this was a game. When I got home, I started piecing together everything I knew. The phone records, the photos, the lies. It all pointed to a woman who had had no intention of coming clean on her own. But there was still one question that haunted me. Was Eric the only one, or had there been others? I decided to dig deeper. Kelly wasn't as careful as she probably thought. Her email was still logged in on the shared laptop, and as I clicked through her inbox, my worst fears were confirmed. Dozens of emails, some recent, some dating back years. They weren't just from Eric either. There were other names, other conversations. She'd been living a double life for longer than I'd imagined. The emails with Eric were the most damning. There were hotel receipts, dinner reservations, even plans for weekend getaways. One email in particular caught my attention. It was from 2 weeks ago. He'd booked a cabin for the two of them, a romantic weekend to celebrate us, as he'd written. I felt sick. While I was working late nights to keep our life together, she was sneaking off to play house with this guy. But it wasn't just the emails. There were photos too. Pictures of them at restaurants, on a boat, even one of them at a concert I'd mentioned wanting to go to with her. She'd taken another man to the place I thought we'd share memories. The betrayal wasn't just physical, it was emotional. She'd given him everything that used to be ours. The more I uncovered, the angrier I got. But it wasn't just anger, it was resolve. I wasn't going to let her walk all over me, to humiliate me, and think she could get away with it. If she wanted to destroy our marriage, fine, but she was going to face the consequences. That evening, Kelly came home. She looked tired, like she'd had a long day, but she didn't say anything to me. She just went upstairs, probably assuming I wouldn't have the courage to confront her again. But she was wrong. Kelly, I called out, my voice echoing through the quiet house. She paused on the stairs, turning to look at me. What? We need to talk. Now. She sighed, rolling her eyes as she came back down. Tom, I'm tired. Can we do this tomorrow? No, I said firmly. We're doing this now. She sat on the couch, crossing her arms like a child about to be scolded. What is it this time? I grabbed my phone and pulled up the photos I'd taken of her car at Eric's house. I tossed the phone onto the coffee table, the images glaring up at her like an accusation. Her face paled. What is this? You tell me, I said, my voice cold. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've been spending your time at Eric's place. And don't bother denying it. I saw you. She stared at the screen, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Save it, I snapped. I'm done listening to your lies. Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't care. She'd made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. Tom, please, it's not what it looks like. It's exactly what it looks like, I said. You've been cheating on me, and not just with him. I found the emails, Kelly, the photos, the hotel bookings. How long were you planning to keep this up? She broke down then, sobbing into her hands. But her tears didn't move me. They were too little, too late. You're going to pack your things, I said, my voice steady. And you're going to leave. Tomorrow. I'll be contacting a lawyer. This marriage is over. Kelly looked up at me, her face streaked with tears. You can't do this, she whispered. Watch me. I replied as I walked away, leaving her alone on the couch. I felt a strange sense of calm. For the first time in months, I was taking control of my life. Kelly's lies and betrayal had broken me, but they hadn't destroyed me, and I was determined to come out of this stronger than ever. The next morning, I was up early, fueled by a restless night and a determination to reclaim my life. Kelly's bags were still unpacked, her clothes and belongings scattered across the house like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. I wasn't going to let her linger here, pretending this was still her home. She had made her choices, and now she would face the consequences. I had already started reaching out to a divorce lawyer first thing in the morning. The firm I contacted came highly recommended, and after explaining the situation, they assured me I had a solid case for infidelity. They also gave me a piece of advice I hadn't considered: document everything. Evidence would be my strongest weapon in this fight, and I had plenty of it. Kelly finally emerged from the bedroom around 10 a.m., looking like she hadn't slept at all. Her eyes were red and puffy, but I felt no sympathy. She didn't deserve it. We need to talk, she said, her voice trembling. I looked up from my laptop, where I'd been compiling the damning evidence against her. Talk about what, Kelly? You've already said enough. She hesitated, her hands fidgeting nervously. Tom, please, I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But can we at least try to work through this? I still love you. I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. You love me? That's rich coming from someone who's been sneaking around behind my back for months. You don't love me, Kelly. You love what I provide for you, and now that it's slipping away, you're panicking. That's not true, she protested. I made a mistake, yes, but it didn't mean anything. I slammed my laptop shut, standing to face her. Didn't mean anything? Are you kidding me, Kelly? I have photos, emails, and God knows what else showing months of lies and deceit. You planned getaways, shared intimate moments, and spent time with him while I was here working my ass off to build a life for us. Don't insult me by saying it didn't mean anything. Her eyes filled with tears again, and I could see the cracks forming in her defense. I don't know what you want me to say, Tom. I'm sorry, I really am. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my anger in check. What I want is for you to pack your things and leave. You've got until the end of the day. Her face twisted in disbelief. You're kicking me out? Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem, I said flatly. Maybe Eric will take you in. He seemed pretty cozy with you the other day. She flinched at the mention of his name, her tears turning into anger. You're being cruel. No, Kelly, I said, my voice firm. Cruel is betraying your husband and destroying your marriage. Cruel is lying to my face while you're sneaking off with someone else. What I'm doing is justice. She stormed off, slamming the bedroom door behind her. I heard her yelling and throwing things around, but I didn't care. Let her throw her tantrum. It didn't change the fact that she was leaving. While she packed, I started making calls. I contacted our bank to separate our accounts and ensure she couldn't drain anything before the divorce proceedings began. I also called our utilities and other joint accounts, making sure everything was in my name or canceled. I wasn't going to let her walk away with more than she deserved. By the afternoon, Kelly finally emerged, dragging 2 suitcases behind her. She stopped in the living room, looking at me like she expected some last-minute reprieve. I gave her nothing. Where are you going? I asked coldly. I don't know yet, she admitted, her voice small, but I'll figure it out. I nodded, my expression unchanging. Good. Don't come back. As she left, I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. This was the woman I'd once loved, the woman I'd hoped to spend my life with. But now all I felt was betrayal and anger. She wasn't the person I thought she was, and maybe she never had been. That night, I sat in the now empty house, trying to process everything that had happened. My phone buzzed with a notification, and I saw an email from my lawyer confirming our consultation for the next day. Attached was a checklist of documents I needed to bring, including proof of infidelity. As I scrolled through the emails and photos I'd collected, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. It was an email from Kelly to Eric, sent just a few days ago. The subject line read, "Our future plans." My heart pounded as I opened it, the words on the screen making my blood run cold. In the email, Kelly had detailed how she was planning to leave me. She mentioned that she'd been moving small amounts of money from our joint account into a secret savings account over the past year. She also talked about how Eric had promised to support her once she left me, but only if she could prove she wasn't tied down financially. I stared at the screen, the betrayal cutting deeper than ever. She hadn't just cheated on me. She'd been plotting to ruin me, to drain me of everything I had, and walk away with this guy like I was nothing. Anger surged through me, but this time it wasn't blind rage. It was calculated, cold, and determined. Kelly and Eric thought they could play me, but they were about to learn just how wrong they were. The next morning, I woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. The rage from the night before hadn't subsided, but now it was focused. Kelly's betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was calculated. She hadn't stumbled into an affair. She had planned to leave me destitute and walk away with Eric, smug and satisfied. Well, that wasn't going to happen. Before my appointment with the lawyer, I went through every file, bank statement, and email I could find. I needed to uncover the full extent of what she had done. The more I uncovered, the more my anger burned. Kelly had been siphoning off money for over a year. At first, it was small amounts, $150 here, $100 there, but over time, it added up to thousands. She must have thought I wouldn't notice, and honestly, I hadn't until now. I made copies of everything. The emails, the transaction records, the photos of her car at Eric's house. By the time I was done, I had a stack of evidence that painted a clear picture of her deceit. At the lawyer's office, I laid it all out. My lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Rebecca, took one look at the pile of evidence and nodded. "You've got a strong case," she said. "Between the infidelity and the financial deception, we can make sure she doesn't get a dime more than she's entitled to. In fact, we might even be able to go after the money she already took." Her confidence gave me hope. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I had the upper hand. Rebecca explained the next steps: filing for divorce, freezing our joint accounts, and issuing a formal demand for the return of the stolen funds. She also suggested hiring a forensic accountant to dig deeper into Kelly's finances. If there were more secrets, we'd find them. When I left the office, I felt a strange mix of emotions: relief that I was taking action, anger at the situation, and a lingering sadness for what I had lost. But I didn't have time to dwell on that. There was still work to do. I spent the rest of the day tying up loose ends. I closed the joint credit cards, canceled her access to the streaming services, and even removed her from the grocery delivery account. If she wanted to start a new life with Eric, she could do it without the comforts I had provided. That evening, I received a text from Kelly. It was short and to the point. "Can we talk?" I stared at the message for a long moment, debating whether to respond. Finally, I typed back, "What's left to say?" Her reply came almost instantly. "Please, just meet me one last time." Against my better judgment, I agreed. I wasn't sure if I wanted closure, answers, or just to see if she would finally admit to everything. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop downtown, a neutral place where neither of us would feel at home. When I arrived, Kelly was already there, sitting at a corner table. She looked different, tired, almost defeated. For a moment, I felt a pang of sympathy, but I quickly pushed it aside. She had brought this on herself. "Thanks for coming," she said as I sat down. "Let's make this quick," I replied, my tone icy. She took a deep breath. "Tom, I know I've hurt you, and I know I've made mistakes, but mistakes?" I interrupted, leaning forward. "Kelly, this wasn't a mistake. It was a series of deliberate choices. You didn't trip and fall into an affair. You didn't accidentally move money out of our account. You chose to betray me over and over again." Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't let up. "So tell me, what do you want?" Why am I here? I want to explain, she said, her voice trembling. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Eric was. He was just supposed to be a distraction. Someone to make me feel alive again. I never meant for it to go this far. I laughed bitterly. You didn't mean for it to go this far, Kelly? You planned to leave me. You stole from me. You lied to my face every single day. How far were you planning to take it? She looked away, her silence telling me everything I needed to know. Here's the thing, Kelly, I continued. I've already filed for divorce. I've got a lawyer, and I've documented everything. The money you took, the emails, the photos. It's all there. You're not walking away from this clean. Her head snapped up, panic flashing in her eyes. Tom, you don't have to do this. We can fix this. I'll give the money back, I swear. Just don't do this. I shook my head. It's too late for that. You made your choices, and now you'll deal with the consequences. Kelly sat back, her expression a mix of anger and fear. You're really going to destroy me, aren't you? You destroyed yourself, I said, standing up. I'm just making sure you don't take me down with you. As I walked out of the coffee shop, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Kelly's pleas didn't matter anymore. She had shown me who she truly was, and I wasn't going to let her manipulate me into staying in a broken marriage. The storm wasn't over yet, but for the first time, I felt like I was steering the ship. Kelly and Eric thought they had me cornered, but they underestimated me, and as the truth continued to unfold, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going down without a fight. The drive home from the diner was a blur. My mind raced with everything Kelly had confessed, Eric's manipulation, the embezzlement, the threats. If even half of what she'd said was true, this wasn't just a case of infidelity anymore. It was criminal, and it had the potential to destroy not just Kelly, but anyone connected to her, including me. I knew one thing for sure. I needed to act quickly and carefully. Eric might have thought he was untouchable, but he'd underestimated one thing. I wasn't going to roll over and let him win. The first step was to gather evidence against him. I reached out to Rebecca and told her everything Kelly had admitted. She was calm and methodical as always, but I could tell she was concerned. This complicates things, she said. If Eric is involved in illegal activity, we need to tread carefully. We can't have this spiraling out of control. What do you suggest? I asked. We need proof, she replied. Concrete evidence that ties him to the financial fraud. If Kelly's willing to cooperate, she could be a valuable witness. But if she's not, we'll need to find another way. The thought of relying on Kelly made my stomach churn, but I knew Rebecca was right. As much as I hated her for what she'd done, she was the key to taking Eric down. The next day, I met Kelly at her rental. She looked exhausted, her once confident demeanor completely gone. It was hard to feel sorry for her, but I had to admit, she looked genuinely scared. I'll help you, I said as I sat down across from her. But only because I want Eric out of my life as much as you do. This isn't about saving you, Kelly. It's about protecting myself. She nodded, her eyes filled with a mix of relief and shame. Thank you, Tom. I swear I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. Good, I said. Because here's what we're going to do. I laid out the plan I had come up with after consulting with Rebecca. Kelly would reach out to Eric and agree to his demands, at least on the surface. She would tell him she was ready to move the money and ask to meet in person to finalize the details. The goal was to get him talking, ideally somewhere public where we could record the conversation without him realizing it. I'll be nearby, I explained. If he gets suspicious or tries to intimidate you, I'll step in. But you need to keep him talking. The more we can get him to admit, the better. Kelly hesitated, her hands trembling. What if he figures it out? What if he won't, I said firmly. Eric thinks he's smarter than everyone else. He won't see this coming. She nodded, taking a deep breath. Okay, I'll do it. The meeting was set for the following evening at a small cafe on the edge of town. Kelly told Eric she'd bring the account information and that she wanted to discuss their future plans. He agreed without hesitation, clearly eager to get his hands on the money. When the night came, I parked a block away from the cafe, watching as Kelly walked inside. My heart pounded as I saw Eric arrive a few minutes later, his smug grin making my blood boil. He had no idea what was about to hit him. I stayed in my car, listening through the audio recording app Kelly had installed on her phone. At first, their conversation was casual, with Eric laying on the charm and talking about how much he cared for her. But as Kelly steered the discussion toward the money, his tone shifted. You've been stalling, Kelly, he said, his voice low and threatening. I need that money, and I need it now. If you're not serious about this, maybe I need to find someone who is. I told you I'm ready, Kelly replied, her voice trembling just enough to sound convincing. I just needed to make sure everything was in place. You'd better be, Eric said. Because if you screw me over, I'll make sure you regret it. You wouldn't want your soon-to-be ex-husband finding out just how involved you've been in all this, would you? The audacity of his threat made my fists clench. He was trying to intimidate her while I was listening, and it only made me more determined to see this through. Kelly kept her cool, pressing him for details about how he planned to access the account. Eric, arrogant as ever, laid it all out. The fake company he'd set up, the shell accounts, the offshore transfers. Every word was a nail in his coffin. After about 20 minutes, I decided it was time to make my move. I stepped out of the car and walked into the cafe, heading straight for their table. The look on Eric's face when he saw me was priceless. Confusion, shock, and a flicker of fear. Well, isn't this cozy? I said, pulling out my phone. Don't mind me. I'm just here to capture the moment. What the hell is this? Eric snapped, his bravado faltering. This, I said, holding up my phone, is the end of your little scheme. Every word you just said is recorded. The threats, the fraud, the embezzlement, it's all right here. Eric's face turned red as he stood up, towering over me. You think you can scare me? You have no idea who you're messing with. Oh, I think I do, I replied calmly. And so will the police when I hand this over. Eric took a step forward, but I didn't flinch. Go ahead, I said. Make another mistake. I'm sure the cops will love adding assault to your list of charges. He glared at me, his hands clenched into fists, but he didn't move. Instead, he turned to Kelly. You set me up, he hissed. You set yourself up, she shot back, her voice stronger than I'd expected. I'm done being your pawn. Without another word, Eric stormed out of the cafe, his threats echoing in my ears. But I didn't care. I had everything I needed to take him down. As Kelly and I left the cafe, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. The trap had been set, and Eric had walked right into it. The next step was turning the evidence over to Rebecca and letting the legal system do its job. Kelly's betrayal had cost me everything, but now I had the chance to take back control and make sure neither she nor Eric ever hurt me again. The morning after the confrontation at the cafe, I wasted no time. I forwarded the audio recording and all the accompanying evidence to Rebecca. Her response was swift and decisive. This is enough to bury him, she said confidently over the phone. We involve law enforcement immediately. Eric won't walk away from this. Hearing those words was a relief. For weeks, I had been caught in a whirlwind of betrayal and anger, but now I finally felt like I was getting control of my life back. Eric's arrogance had been his downfall, and I was more than ready to see him face the consequences. By noon, Rebecca had coordinated with law enforcement, and a formal investigation was launched. The recording, combined with the documentation of the fraudulent accounts and Eric's threats, painted a damning picture. From what Rebecca explained, it wouldn't just be Eric in trouble. Kelly might also face legal repercussions for her involvement, despite her cooperation. That afternoon, I received a call from a detective working on the case. He wanted me to come down to the station to provide a formal statement. I agreed, knowing this was the final piece needed to solidify the case against Eric. At the station, I detailed everything. Kelly's confession, the embezzlement scheme, the threats Eric had made, and the recording from the cafe. The detective listened intently, nodding as I laid it all out. This is solid, he said, flipping through the pages of evidence. We'll bring him in for questioning. If he slips up even once, we'll have enough to make an arrest. Hearing that gave me a sense of closure I hadn't thought possible. Eric had stolen more than money. He had stolen my peace of mind, my marriage, and my sense of trust. Knowing he would finally face justice made it all feel worth it. That evening, as I sat alone in my house, the silence felt different. It wasn't oppressive or lonely. It was peaceful. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. But my thoughts weren't entirely free of Kelly. Despite everything, part of me still mourned the life we had built together and the person I thought she was. My phone buzzed, pulling me out of my thoughts. It was Kelly. Against my better judgment, I picked up. What do you want, Kelly? I asked, my tone flat. I wanted to thank you, she said, her voice shaky, for not letting Eric get away with this. I scoffed. Let's not rewrite history, Kelly. You didn't come clean out of the goodness of your heart. You only told me the truth because you were scared. Don't think for a second this erases everything you've done." She was silent for a moment, and I could hear her breathing on the other end. Finally, she spoke. "You're right. I don't deserve forgiveness. But I'm still sorry, Tom, for everything." Her words didn't carry the weight they once would have. They felt hollow, too little, too late. "Goodbye, Kelly," I said, ending the call. The next day, I got an update from Rebecca. Law enforcement had executed a search warrant on Eric's home and business. They found enough evidence to charge him with multiple counts of fraud, embezzlement, and extortion. He had been arrested and was awaiting trial. As for Kelly, things were more complicated. While her cooperation had helped build the case against Eric, her involvement in the scheme couldn't be ignored. Rebecca explained that the district attorney was considering offering her a plea deal in exchange for her testimony. It wasn't the punishment I had hoped for, but at least she wouldn't walk away completely unscathed. In the weeks that followed, I focused on rebuilding my life. The divorce was moving forward, and Rebecca assured me that with the evidence we had, Kelly wouldn't see a penny more than she was legally entitled to. I moved into a smaller, cozier place and started fresh. Months later, the day of Eric's trial arrived. I hadn't planned to attend, but a part of me wanted to see him face the consequences. Sitting in the courtroom, I watched as the prosecutor laid out the case with precision, using the evidence I had provided to dismantle Eric's defense piece by piece. When the verdict came down, guilty on all counts, a wave of relief washed over me. Eric's smug arrogance was gone, replaced by the realization that he had lost everything. He was sentenced to several years in prison, and the judge made it clear that restitution to his victims would be part of his punishment. As I left the courthouse, I felt a sense of closure. This chapter of my life, as painful and chaotic as it had been, was finally over. Looking back, I can't say I'm glad it happened. The betrayal, the lies, the heartbreak, they changed me in ways I'm still coming to terms with. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that strength doesn't come from avoiding pain. It comes from surviving it. Kelly and Eric thought they could break me, but they were wrong. I'm still standing, stronger and wiser than before, and as I move forward, I know one thing for certain. I'll never let anyone take my peace away again.